And now it's gotten very good to the point, coding is going to be automated. Nobody would believe you.
오픈AI의 최고 제품 책임자 케빈 웨일은 이번 인터뷰에서 코딩 자동화, GPT-5, AI의 미래에 대한 의미심장한 내용들을 이야기합니다. AI는 어디까지 발전했을까요? 그리고 우리의 미래는 어떻게 바뀔까요? 함께 들어보시죠.
I mean, at the rate that we're going, I would be surprised if it's 2027. I think it's going to be sooner.
And Kevin's like, if Anthropic said 2027, we're going to say 2026.
Look, so when we launched GPT-4o, like you said, very good coding model, like back end of GitHub Copilot and all these other things. People are using it at scale all over the world. But it doesn't really compare with, like, when we launched O1 Preview, it was a much better coding model because reasoning matters when you're writing code, right? Whether you're anything hard you're doing, if you're doing a crossword puzzle or a Sudoku, you're writing code, you want some level of reasoning, some ability to like break down a problem into smaller problems, form hypotheses, validate or refute those hypotheses. And like, that's what reasoning is doing. So O1 Preview was, I think, the best, like the millionth best competitive programmer in the world. When you play it against you sort of replay a bunch of programming competitions, it would come in at about a millionth, which, doesn't sound that great, but there are, I don't know, 30, 40 million programmers in the world. So you're like top 2-3%. O1, that was O1 Preview. O1, when it launched, our first like real launch of a coding model, was something like the 1,000th best engineer in the world at competitive coding contests. O3, which is coming soon, according to the same benchmarks, is the 175th best competitive coder in the world. And as we are starting to train, the successor models, they're already better. And so I think this is the year that, at least by the competitive coding benchmark, this is the year that AI becomes better than humans at competitive code forever, right? In the same way that computers passed humans at like multiplying 70 years ago, and AI passed humans at chess like 15 years ago. This is the year that AI gets better than humans at programming like forever, right? And there's no going back. And we're putting a lot of focus into this. Anthropic's putting a lot of focus into this. Google's putting a lot of focus into this. So of all the things, this is going to move really fast. I think that humans, with most like human creation, there is a sense of like a proof of work that's valued. So if it becomes super easy, and I think it will, to create a bunch of like AI based content, you can already do it with images all the time, right? It's not. There's people value something that they know took a lot of time and energy to create. They don't necessarily value the thing that you can make in 5 seconds. And so, as it relates to like, take Sora, right? You can't go to Sora today. Sora's our video model for folks that haven't heard of it. You can't go to Sora today and be like, Sora, make me a movie, right? It just doesn't work.
Yeah.
But it can, if you give it like really thoughtful, detailed prompts, you can make it create amazing things. And we have a creator internally who's like worked in the industry before. He can do things with Sora that I can't believe. Like, they're well beyond anything I can do. We have the same tool, but he can still do amazing things with it. I was talking to a director the other day who's looking at using Sora, and he was saying, look, before he like does sci-fi stuff. And he's like, okay, so imagine you've got this sci-fi scene, you've got like, plane in outer space, kind of like zooming into a planet, like maybe some sort of Death Star type planet. And then you need to cut to a scene where the thing is like zooming along the surface of this like technological planet. How do you make that cut from one thing to the other? There's a bunch of different ways you could do it. And what he was saying was, look, today I would go to a special effects studio and I would give them like $100,000 and they would make me 2 different versions of the cut scene. And it would take them a month and I would select from one of those 2 because that's all I really have. With Sora, he can make, in the space of an afternoon, he can make like 40 different versions of that same cutscene, exploring a whole bunch of different avenues, just like letting his creativity run wild and, sort of collaborating with the AI to do even more. And then at the end of the day, he might still go to that same like special effects studio to do the one that he really likes. But he's going there with a whole bunch of different ideas in his head. He's chosen one out of 50, and then he ends up with something that he likes way better because he collaborated with the AI. Like, I think there's a world like that. It doesn't mean that you just like snap your fingers and everyone creates amazing stuff. It's going to take a huge amount of work to do great work. You know, the bar probably stays the same for how much effort and expertise it takes to do great work. It's just the output with AI can be that much better and maybe that much more accessible to the rest of the world. Well, I think the world, I mean, technology is an ever increasing step up the ladder of abstractions, right? We move faster because we're not having to design our own circuits. And then once you have your circuits, you're not having to like write machine code. And then you have assembler, but you don't have to write, you're not writing machine code anymore, you're writing assembler. And then you're writing C, and then you're writing Python. And then you have web frameworks that do things for you, and you're not worried about the underlying operating system because you're living in a browser. You know, like the world is a series of increasing abstractions, and those abstractions help you move faster, and AI is one more abstraction that helps you move faster. So yeah, do you if you use AI a lot to write a bunch of your code, and if you don't ultimately care about the code that much, what you care is the output of the product. Do you know the internals of the code as well as if you'd done it yourself? Probably not.
Yeah.
But you know, do I know my dad was an engineer, worked on compilers at Microsoft back in the day. You know, do I know the internals of the thing that's compiling my code to the degree that my dad did? Definitely not. But does it I mean, I'm also not writing like Fortran. I'm, you know, writing Python in a web browser and deploying it in real time. So like these things are trade-offs. There's nothing like you lose maybe a little bit of that, but you gain speed, and you gain the ability to bring this not just to like the subset of people that happen to know compilers and Fortran, but to anybody in the world that can use ChatGPT. And that's amazing, right? And it doesn't preclude you from ever going way down into the details if you want to, right? There are still people that make chips, and they do an incredible service to the world. But the majority of people don't need to learn that level of the stack.
그렇다면 인간의 역할은 무엇일까요? AI가 모든 것을 평준화시킨다면 개인의 전문성과 경험은 여전히 의미가 있을까요?
I mean, I think so. What will matter in a world where, I mean, first of all, like Jeff Dean is a better engineer than I am, and I'm willing to bet you that Jeff Dean plus AI is a better engineer than me plus AI. You know, so like the expertise and the experience, right? Just not just like the raw intelligence, but understanding what problems to solve, where to focus your work, you know, where the leverage is. Those kinds of things are still going to matter. And so I don't think that like everything just completely equalizes across the board, and expertise no longer matters. Also, though, then you start to think what matters at that point, and if you can create anything, then it puts a huge emphasis on knowing what to create. You know, so who has a feel for what are the most important problems to solve, and how you would go about solving them? And if more people have access to the ability to solve those problems, the world is going to be a better place because more problems are going to get solved, and like we will move ahead faster as a society. And I'm excited for that.
결국 AI는 인간의 능력을 대체하는 것이 아니라 확장하는 도구가 될 것입니다. 오픈AI는 기존 GPT 모델과는 다른 새로운 방식의 모델을 개발하며 AI의 가능성을 확장해 왔는데요. 이런 모델들은 어떻게 발전해 왔고 앞으로 어디까지 나아갈 수 있을까요?
As we bring the models back together, we've had this bifurcation where historically we had all the GPT models, right? You have GPT 3, 3.5, 4, now 4.5, and these models are fed by bigger and bigger pre-training runs. And then we had this breakthrough last year with reasoning, and because the models were incredible, O1 preview, O1, 03 that's coming soon, can do unbelievable things. The benchmarks, they're off the charts. They can do things that, by all the scaling laws, you would have had to pre-train a model that was 100,000 times the size to get there. So they're incredible in what they can do. But at the time, especially, they didn't have all the bells and whistles that our GPT models did. They couldn't search the web. They couldn't, handle file uploads, et cetera. They're just really good at reasoning. And because of that, we gave them a new name, and we sort of branched the series. because we couldn't really combine them. They didn't have the same set of capabilities, but there were times when you really wanted to use one and times when you really wanted to use the other. And, I think that was the right decision, even though it was confusing, because it helped us get these things out into the world. And now people are making advances with them. They're doing amazing things with the models, whether it's like coding or frontier science or other things. Um, and so, in most things, we optimize for velocity. We optimize for putting these new tools in the hands of people so they can do more cool things faster. But we bifurcated. And now, as we've sort of gotten familiarity with these reasoning models, we're teaching them to use all the tools that the GPT series can do. So they can handle file uploads and they can search the web and they can use Python as they reason, which is kind of crazy, by the way. Like as they're reasoning to solve a problem, they can write code to help them like understand it better. Super cool when it happens. But so now the O series and the GPT series are starting to have the same sort of capabilities, and it gives us an opportunity to bring them back together. And that's what we're planning to do with GPT-5. So we are working on simplifying, even though we are epically terrible at naming.
결국 AI 모델은 점점 더 복합적인 기능을 갖추면서도 하나의 통합된 시스템으로 발전해 가고 있습니다. 오픈AI는 GPT-5를 통해 이런 변화를 더욱 가속화하고 있으며 앞으로 AI가 문제 해결 과정에서 어떻게 더 강력한 도구가 될 수 있을지 기대되는 부분이 많습니다. 우리는 이제 인공지능이 단순한 언어 모델이 아니라 복잡한 문제를 해결하는 파트너로 자리 잡아가는 시대를 맞이하고 있는 것이죠. 앞으로 어떻게 AI의 한계가 확장되어 나갈지 기대됩니다. 더 많은 이야기로 다시 찾아오겠습니다. 이 영상이 유익하셨다면 좋아요와 구독 부탁드립니다. 시청해주셔서 감사합니다.